Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. As we wait for people to hop in, please feel free to use the chat room to introduce yourself and your business. Hello, everyone. I am getting messages that the chat room is disabled. Is anyone able to see the chat? We want everyone to be able to use it the meeting. Okay. Um, Michelle, can you work on getting the chat room, um, make it available for everyone? It looks like no one's able to access it.
Yes, I am working on that. It's now saying that everyone can chat with everyone, but I don't see anybody in there. So I'll work on that.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you. All right, thanks everyone for joining. We hit the 1 o'clock mark, so we'll get started. My name is Trinity Williams. I'm with Griffin and Strong PC. We are a law and policy consulting firm. We've been contracted by the state of Alabama to perform a procurement study, and we're working closely with the Alabama Office of Minority Affairs, who is on the call with us today. So before we get started with our presentation, to provide more insights about the information for the procurement study and how you all can get involved throughout the study. I will open the floor up for the project team to provide their introductions.
My name is Michelle Clark Jenkins. I head the consulting group of Griffin and Strong. Can I pass it to David? David, you're on mute. Oh, you can't. Okay. He can't unmute.
Okay, thank you, host. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Maher. I'm with the legal division of Griffin and Strong.
Vince?
Yeah, host has to unmute everybody individually, I think. Good afternoon. I'm Vince Egan. I'm a senior consultant with Griffin and Strong. I work on the policy review and the data analysis.
Thomas? Thomas, you have to unmute.
Oh, you hear me? Hello, everyone. I'm the data analytic coordinator at the GSBC.
Is there anyone from Griffin and Strong that I have missed?
Good afternoon, Calvin Walden, a data analyst, Griffin and Strong.
Okay. Trinity, back to you.
All right, I'll pass it to Director Robinson with the Alabama Office of Minority Affairs.
And good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, I am Stacia Robinson, the Alabama Office of Minority Affairs Director, and we're so excited to have this. This is an inaugural study that's being done. It is intended to baseline all of the activities along the lines of responsibility that we have on behalf of minorities and women in the state of Alabama. We're starting with the procurement study as the reason that you all are here and on behalf of business. And so I just want to thank all of you for joining in. We expect to get a lot of data that will help us move forward and make a difference, again, for women and minorities. Thanks for being here.
All right. Thank you. And anyone else from your team would like to introduce themselves? Natalie, Christina? All right. Well, we'll move forward with the presentation. Again, thanks everyone for joining us today for the Alabama Procurement Study. We'll start with a brief presentation about the study. One moment, let me share my screen. All right, so a little bit about Griffin and Strong PC. We do specialize in procurement research, training, and supplier diversity consulting, contract compliance, and program development. We are the most qualified team in this industry with 6 JDs. We have 2 PhDs in economic, economics, PhD in social psychology, and PhD in anthropology. Sorry, economics. And then this is important to note that no study conducted by us has ever been challenged or overturned in court, which we'll discuss the importance of that later. So more on this agenda for today's presentation, we'll be discussing a little bit about our experts. We'll discuss the objective and purpose of the study, the methodology and study process. We'll discuss the project timeline, and we'll have a Q&A at the end of the presentation. All right, so our project executive, Attorney Strong, has unmatched expertise. He has served as the director of the City of Atlanta's Department of Contracts Compliance. He was actually the project manager on the very first post-Croson procurement study, which is a case that we'll highlight later in the presentation as well. He has served as the principal architect of the City of Atlanta's Equal Business Opportunity Contracting Program, and he has been the expert witness for 2 cases so far. And then we have our principal investigator on the call with us today, Dr. Vince Egan. He is one of the foremost expert witnesses nationwide. He has conducted over 150 studies. I think he's at about 200 studies now, and he has successfully defended 6 studies as an expert witness. We also have our senior economist, Dr. Price. He has over 25 years of expertise in economic analysis of discrepancies of employment. He will be doing our private sector analysis for the study. He has expertise in private sector contracting, lending, and public contracting, and he was recently named one of the top 40 Black economists of the last 30 years. The objective of the study, to give you more insight about the purpose of the procurement study, is used to determine where there are economic growth opportunities for women and minority-owned businesses in the state's executive branch departments in procurement of goods and services using state funds. And with the findings of each of the chapters that we'll have, also result in recommendations by the study team, and if accepted, they are intended to be implemented as policy. And here is our study process. So we start with the legal analysis, which is essentially looking at the relevant case law. We also look into the state's policies, purchasing, and procedures, which we'll talk about as well later in the presentation. We collect and clean data. We'll look at the relevant market. We'll also do a utilization and availability analysis. And comparing both utilization and availability analysis gives us our gap analysis. We'll be doing a regression analysis, which is that private sector that I touched on. We'll also be doing anecdotal evidence collection and analysis, and that's where you all can continue to be involved. And then we'll have our final report with recommendations. And I will pass it to David to discuss the legal requirements. David, are you muted?
David, are you having a hard time unmuting? Are you having a difficulty unmuting?
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, I need the host to unmute me. So thank you. And again, good afternoon, everyone. When we talk about procurement studies, there's a question about where they came from and what their purpose is. And again, it's as Trinity had talked about, these are form a factual basis for any kind of remedial contracting program or procurement program. And they are a product of case law. So the City of Richmond versus J.A. Croson case from 1989 established some of the methodological requirements and also the constitutional requirements for procurement studies. And so oftentimes there are going to be socioeconomic factors that impact procurement. So that some of those classifications may be race-based, ethnicity-based or gender-based, but they also could be race or gender neutral and look at things like firm size, so small businesses or veteran-owned businesses or other socioeconomically disadvantaged persons running businesses. And so each of these different classifications brings different constitutional scrutiny. And the lowest level of constitutional scrutiny is called the rational basis test, which really just requires a rational relationship between the policy and what the governmental entity is trying to accomplish. What we have up on this slide is the most difficult level of constitutional scrutiny, which is the strict scrutiny standard, which would be addressed or applied to any race-based program. There is also intermediate scrutiny for gender-based programs in the 11th Circuit, which the state of Alabama is located in. And so if you're facing a strict scrutiny situation, you've got to have a factual basis and evidence to justify a remedial program. And then you need to narrowly tailor any remedy to address what you have found in that factual basis. So again, the procurement study is intended to provide that factual basis, and it's dependent upon which classifications are used, the different constitutional standards will be applied. Finally, the methodology that we're talking about in this meeting is by and large directed by the case law as well, not just in the city of Richmond case, but decades of case law since then. She talks about the different kinds of methodologies that are accepted by courts for these kinds of procurement studies.
David, could I just interrupt you just for a second?
Sure.
We are not able, unfortunately, to get the chat room to work. However, we very much want to be able to answer any questions that you have. So if you have questions as the presentation is progressing, please put them in the Q&A. And then we will, once we've completed the presentation, we will endeavor to answer all of them. Okay.
Trinity, would you like me to take the policy slide as well?
Yes, please.
Okay, and so as indicated on the structure of the procurement study, one of the early elements is policy review. And what we're doing in the policy review is reviewing the written policies and conducting interviews with staff who are implementing those procurement policies. And we're looking to see whether there are discrepancies between the policies as they are written and as they're being implemented. We're also trying to find out whether or not the policies as written are being understood by staff. And then finally, are there policies that are presenting a barrier to increase participation from either women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, or again, other classifications like small businesses or other socioeconomic groups. And so at the end of that policy review, there will be a policy chapter drafted to talk a little bit about what those findings were and possibly recommendations for addressing any kind of disconnect between written policies and the policies as they are being implemented on a day-to-day basis by staff.
All right, thank you, David. Dr. Egan.
He might have to be unmuted.
Dr. Egan, if you're speaking,
Okay.
you're on. Oh,
No,
there you
I'm
go.
on. Yeah, the host has to unmute each speaker. You have to unmute each speaker. I put that in the chat. I can't unmute myself. So whoever the host is has to unmute each speaker. Okay. Yeah, so the starting point of a procurement review, trying to see are the firms who are available being used in some proportion to their availability. We start with what geographical area and what product market area. And so we tend to look to where are most of the firms located that do work with the state of Alabama. Typically, the starting point will probably be the state, but it may reach somewhat beyond the state. And the kind of rule of thumb that most of these studies use is where is 75% of the dollars located with what firms sell 75% of the dollars used by the state. Next slide. Then we look at a utilization analysis, and we look at prime and subcontractors. Subcontractors is usually the most difficult area to study. We break that down by year, by business category, and then by the socioeconomic groups that we are looking at. Then we look at contract size, to what extent are firms being utilized because the contracts are too large. So we break down to look at utilization at smaller size contracts. And then, as I said, we compare that to the availability of firms. And there are different approaches, and this is one of the more controversial aspects of any of these studies. But our starting point is looking at firms that affirmatively seek to do work with public agencies within the relevant market that we've identified. So we want to look at firms that bid on Alabama contracts, who are vendors, who are awardees, et cetera. Next slide. We then compare that to see, is there some gap between the availability firms and their participation in Alabama contracting. And then we try to see, is that gap, is it large? Is it statistically significant? And then we do a regression analysis to see that if you control for certain kind of business factors, how long have you been in business, how many employees you have, the size of your company, educational status, are these really predominant factors in explaining the success of firms trying to do work with the state of Alabama? Next slide. We then also look at the private sector. Are there issues in the private sector? We look at census data to look at differences in the self-employment rates of various groups. We look at issues in facing credit markets. Are there differences in loan denial rates amongst groups? And then we look at building permit data as a sort of rough index of participation in commercial private sector construction. Next slide.
All right, thank you, Dr. Egan. So community engagement and anecdotal evidence is where we would like you all to be involved. These are the factors that we have for anecdotal. We'll have an informational meeting conducted today. We'll also be conducting anecdotal interviews, which are one-on-one interviews with business owners. Those are actually being conducted right now. So if you do hear from us, please, please, please get involved. Those are randomly selected. Also, the survey of business owners will have that launched. It's just a way of us quantifying your testimonies. We would also like you to get involved in that. The public hearings will have, this is a way of you all to provide your testimonies of doing business or attempting to do business with the state of Alabama. We'll have focus groups. These are also randomly selected, but we'll be asking your input and your perspective in a group setting. We'll have business and organizational meetings. I have been reaching out to organizations. If you have seen an email from me, please let me know if you're interested in participating in the study by doing an interview with us. We're also willing to meet with your organization to provide your membership an opportunity to get involved in the study as well. And we would encourage you to share this information, all of the events that we'll have with your membership and your network. And we'll also be receiving email and social media comments. So I'll drop the study website as well as the study email. If you don't feel comfortable participating in an interview, you can email us. All of the comments are your name will not be, they're all confidential in the final report of the study. But if you don't feel comfortable, please feel free to email us. And I do want to note that we will be providing the public hearings in other languages as well. So those options will be provided. And then how can you get involved? Be vocal, participate in the survey, participate in all of the interviews, the focus groups, the public hearings as well. We cannot express enough how important hearing directly from the community is. So be vocal, participate in the events. If you would like to receive notifications of upcoming events that aren't yet posted, please let me know, and I will email you. Keep up with study updates by visiting the website, and send comments to the studies email. And here's the website. Again, I'll drop it into the chat, and here is the study email. And I will pass it to Michelle to discuss the findings and recommendations.
All right, great. Thank you, Trinity. So you've heard a lot about, kind of our methodology in conducting this procurement study. And so I'm sure your question is, okay, once you've done all this, what's kind of the end goal? And the beginning goal and the end goal is to look at the growth potential of public contracting, particularly for all sectors of Alabama's business community. And we're particularly, of course, the mandate of the Minority Business Office is to look at, how are women and minority-owned firms participating in the economic growth in the state of Alabama. So at the end of this, we're taking all of this data and looking at where there are opportunities and if there are increased potential places where minority and women-owned firms can better participate in the state's contracting process. So in that, we'll be making some recommendations out of our study based on the findings in all these areas that you've heard about in the statistical area, particularly looking at the current utilization of minority and women-owned firms in those areas, and then looking at their availability in the marketplace. That's a huge thing, which is who are all the firms out there who could be doing business and providing goods and services to the state. And we'll look at that in a number of different ways. What Trinity talked about, which is the anecdotal evidence, is critical for your participation. We love the fact that so many of you came to this informational meeting. It's actually kind of record-breaking for us that you all have shown this kind of interest. So I hope you'll give us a little grace on the technical issues, because we've never had this many firms participate in a meeting like this. And so what it says is that there is a huge interest across the state in what it is we're doing. And we need you to keep that momentum going throughout the next year to 18 months that we'll be conducting this study, because what's critical to us is that we get your input. So when we see that there are opportunities, we need to know what works well in terms of the procurement process at the state, and where you have concerns about how you think particularly minority and women-owned firms, as well as of all sectors of firms, can better participate in the process. So again, we need you to continue. When you get a survey or you're asked to participate in something, please respond, because that's the only way we're going to know the needs of the business community. Next slide, please. So this is our projected timeline. We have already begun. We started over the summer, began to put together with data. So looking at data is very important to us. We worked on putting together the legal analysis that David's been working on. Dr. Egan, along with David, have been working on the policy review, and we've been beginning to collect data. Through the winter, the website, as Trinity mentioned, has already launched. There'll be more information there and ways that you can contact us through that, as well as our email address. The anecdotal interviews you should be reached out to. Those will be randomly selected to give us one-on-one, which really becomes kind of like case studies. And then we'll, of course, this informational meeting. And then for the spring and the fall, we'll be deep into data and collecting more. We'll have public meetings. We will have focus groups. And again, the all-important survey. And then sometime about this time next year, we will expect to produce a final report. And so that's our presentation. Our CEO, Rodney Strong, has joined us just in time for a really good question in the chat. And that is how the recent Supreme Court case and do you think has threatened DEI? So let me make sure that you are unmuted, because I think you muted yourself again. Hold on. Okay.
All right. What the Supreme Court case does more than anything else is require that anything that the state or any local government does be very carefully considered. And that just means that there were already guidelines, constitutional guidelines in place based on the Supreme Court cases that Attorney Maher has already discussed. And that this Supreme Court case really had to do with college admissions. And so it's not really relevant from a legal standpoint to the area of public contracting. But what it does do is it indicates that the court is going to be very, very scrupulous, very careful about making sure that there is a very narrowly drawn set of actions that the government takes in this area. And so therefore, any recommendations that are made, any kind of policy changes that are made, are going to have to be to take into consideration the fact that the court is really going to look with a great deal of care at anything that is proposed to remediate anything that might be determined based on the study.
Okay. All right, thank you. Someone else asked, will findings of the City of Birmingham study enhance the work conducted in the Alabama procurement study? I think the answer to that is it gives our firm a little bit of experience in Alabama that we hadn't maybe previously had, gives us a little more familiarity. So it's helpful to us. We've seen some of the data in Alabama already. So yeah, it is helpful in terms of us giving us some familiarity, but the data is really all brand new. And then we have another question. Does this study include sole proprietorships? Yes, it includes all businesses. We want to see what the opportunities are out there for all businesses. And part of this, although this is not officially a needs assessment, at the end of the day, the feedback we get from you is kind of, what do you need to succeed? What is it that the state, with people who are trying to do contracting with the state, need? It also helps us to see the capacity of firms to perform for the state. And sometimes there's a misunderstanding about that capacity. When you look at state contracting, people think, well, only big companies can perform services for the state. Well, that's not always true. There are times when the state is doing smaller kinds of contracts, or they're doing things, maybe that can be unbundled, where it gives more opportunities to small businesses that are out there. So part of this is to look where the opportunities are, look at the kinds of things that you may need to succeed, and that includes sole proprietorships. Is the study based on firms that are exclusively located within Alabama, or does it include firms outside of Alabama, but within the 11th Circuit? So determination of what's called a relevant market, which is where are the firms located that we're actually studying, because this is really a study of your firms. And that is determined by where the state is already spending at least 75% of its dollars in various purchasing sectors. With state contracting, that tends to be the state itself. And I'd give a 95% guess that that's probably where our analysis will lead. So if our relevant market is the state of Alabama, then it would be with firms that have a location. Doesn't have to be a headquarters, but they need to have a real location within the state. But that's part of our analysis, is to determine what that geographic area is going to be. Those are all the questions I have in the Q&A. Do you all have more? You can get typing. We're open to answering some more questions. Is there an opportunity for firms that are outside of Alabama to provide feedback regarding concerns about procurement? So that's really interesting, because obviously the state does business with firms that are outside of Alabama. You are welcome to provide that, but we will segment that, because depending on, again, where the relevant market is at this point, we don't know where it is. But let's say our relevant market is the state of Alabama, then we're mostly going to be concerned about the input from those firms that are within the relevant market. However, if you are outside of Alabama, you are welcome, obviously, to make your commentary, but we will obviously indicate that whether that's a firm who's commenting from within or outside of the state. Trinity has put into the chat room that unfortunately you all have not had access to, put the dedicated website that is live, along with the email address. That email address is manned, so that we do have, you will get a response from us if you can tell your story in that email. You can send us along if you, again, like Trinity said, if you are don't want to talk in public, but you want to tell us the story, we're happy to have that. Okay, I think I see some more questions. What happens next now that we have attended this session? Well, the one good thing, all of you are on our contact list, so we will make sure that you are included and contacted about future events. Again, reach out to us if there's a story you want to tell us. Reach out to us, and we do want you to participate in some of the other events, particularly that survey, which all of you will get directly through probably an email from us, because you did come to this meeting. And then the dedicated website will continue to have information on it as we move forward. Rodney, there's a comment about your youthful look after all these years after working for Maynard in Atlanta. In the Q&A.
Well, I'm glad somebody else needs glasses.
What are the statistics regarding whether the states implement the recommendations from the study? I'm assuming what you're asking is, do states really take what we say? We try to, again, we present information, we present data. Clearly, the state, by hiring us and asking us to do this, wants to know, what are the opportunities for all sectors of businesses within the state to participate in public contracting. So it is we fully anticipate that we'll be working with them to make some policy recommendations, and that those policies will be taken into effect. But that is up to the state at the end of the day to determine what it will implement from our findings. How do we determine the appropriate focal point within the state of Alabama for selling our products? So that will be an interesting, the person who asked that, to me, that's kind of indicates a need that says that there is a question about how do we bring our product or services to the state in order to be a part of that process. So again, those are the kinds of things we want to know. If that's unclear, which is how do we even get involved in state purchasing, that may be a need for more outreach. So those are the kinds of things we'll be investigating in our study. Do you know how many businesses you will seek to interview regarding their procurement experience in Alabama? As many as will talk to us. So in terms of the actual one-on-one interviews, the kind of case studies, I think we're doing probably we're doing a sample of those. So those will be, I think, about 50 or 60. However, the focus groups, the public hearings, the emails, and the surveys help us to quantify more of your responses in terms of what we're doing. So the one-on-one interviews are really more like case studies. When do you expect the study to be completed? About this time next year. I do not see the email addresses. Can you please mention on the call, please? Yeah, the email address. Trinity, can you unmute and give them the email address?
Yeah, I can share my screen again, that last slide. But the email address is alabamaprocurementstudy@gspclaw.com, and then the website is alabamaprocurementstudy.com. So let me share my screen so you can all see it as Michelle continues with questions.
There you go. When will the study be available and how will people take it? So it's not I think you mean the survey. The survey, all of you will get an email directly with the link to the survey because you participated in this meeting. You also may get it again because we'll be doing email blasts and press releases and things to get as many firms as we can across the state. And by the way, the survey is for all firms, not just minority and women-owned firms, but all firms are urged to participate in this study. We're looking at all sectors to see how firms are participating in the growth, economic growth within the state. Says, are you intending on using various veteran organizations to obtain input in the study? Absolutely. We would love to have the veteran organizations provide input. Again, I think Trinity mentioned that we do output, we try to work alongside civic, social, and trade organizations to get their members to participate in the study. And so if you are part of one of those organizations, please email us through this email so that and tell us what the organization is and who we should contact. And we will include them on the list of organizations that we hopefully will be partnering with. Would you like us to include verification of the information that we are sharing? For example, emails to prove that procurement rules are not being followed. I'm not sure what that question is asking. So anything, we want to know about your experiences. The more detail you can give us, more detail about your experiences that you want to give us, the better. So yes, we do want, I mean, if you have something that's verification wise, that's great. We don't require verification. What we require is an honest assessment of your perceptions and your experiences in doing business, attempting to do business, or if you haven't even attempted to do business with the state of Alabama, why haven't you? We're interested in that as well. So as a matter of fact, some of the meatiest information we get is when we talk to a firm and they say, well, we haven't even tried to do business, because we're looking again at how do we get more firms participating in the economic growth in the state. Oh, yes, Vince, you need to be unmuted.
Yeah, I'm unmuted now.
Oh, yes, any way you can have the video. The video will be posted on the website. So this is being recorded and will be posted. Why are some locations hesitant to implement a study once completed? I don't know if they're hesitant to implement a study, but we make recommendations based on a couple of things. One is we do this work all around the country, so it's based on what we consider to be best practices around the country that we think will work for our client. We make recommendations based on what we see on the face of the policy, and then we make recommendations on what we hear from you as the business community. That doesn't mean that the state is going to implement everything we recommend. We're not the dictators of that situation. For one reason or another, there may be a determination that what we recommend might not work for our client, some things that maybe we don't know. So I don't think it's as much hesitation to implement the study as it may be hesitation or a decision not to implement maybe some part of what it is that we're recommending. It very rarely, if ever, happens that our clients don't implement something that we've recommended. They just may not implement all of it. We have offices in Alabama and outside of Alabama. Will that cause any issues with our stories or responses? No. We look at the closest locations you have to our relevant market or within our relevant market. So if you have a headquarters in Ohio, but you have an operating office in Alabama, then we will look at you as having a location in Alabama and you'll be part of our relevant market analysis. What languages will the info sessions be held in, and how can I request a meeting for my language, for example, Korean, Vietnamese, and Spanish? And what, Trinity, I'll let you answer those questions.
Yeah, so we will be conducting the public hearings in all three of the languages named: Spanish, Vietnamese, and Korean. If you would like us to conduct any of the public hearings within the languages or outside of those three languages that I named, please email us at the study email, Alabama Procurement Study at gspclaw.com, and we can work on accommodating those languages. Also, we will be providing captioning options for the once we post the recording onto the website as well. And then again, I mentioned in the presentation, if you would like us to do a presentation similar to this and talk to your organization at one of your organization meetings, talk to your membership, we can do that as well. So yeah, just email us if you would like us to accommodate for your language, but we will be doing public hearings for English, Spanish, Korean, and Vietnamese. And we'll also, in addition to that, we'll have the survey in those languages as well.
What if I am a white male business owner? Should I take this survey? Yes, absolutely. The survey is for actually all aspects of what we're doing, is for all firms to participate in this process. We want to know what your experiences have been. We want to know, again, doing business with the state, attempting to do business, or if you haven't, why not? We want to see how firms are, all sectors are being able to participate in the procurement process. And the survey actually is one of our most telling, because unlike some of the other areas, it's very quantifiable. You know, we can say X number of firms said this, X number of firms said that. And we can also isolate firms, you know, by their grouping. So we can look at all sectors of, you know, as we look at the large firms, small firms, you know, where firms are located, we can disaggregate it by ethnicity, race, and gender. We can look at it again by size, or that they're a veteran, or they're, so we can look at whether all sectors are participating in the procurement process. Do you provide step-by-step instructions on how to submit a contract request to the state? So no, that's not within our scope, is to provide that, but it is within our scope to understand what you need in order to do business with the state. So that may be something that you come and tell us, is to say, listen, I don't know how to do business with the state. I think I have a product or service that I could provide to the state, but I need more supportive services. And that falls kind of in the category of supportive services. I need more information and more help in how to, or I need step-by-step instructions on how to submit a request to the state. So that's the kind of information we need to pass on to the state, understanding what the state is asking us to do. We're kind of the needs assessor, or we're kind of getting the information so that we can quantify it, provide that data, and give it to the state so they can better create and understand how to create opportunities for businesses within its relevant market. So everything you can tell us about, you know, what you need in order to do business, and what, again, that big question, your experiences. And we really love to know your experiences, not just what you need, but also what has been your experience doing business, attempting to do business, or if you haven't even attempted to do business, why not? My biggest challenge has been registering as a minority and woman's business enterprise in Alabama. I ended up submitting applications to Georgia and the SE office. How can the process be streamlined and simplified in Alabama? Well, again, you're the person to tell us, because we're not trying to register as a minority or women business in Alabama. You've tried to do that. And so we want to know your experience. So tell us what works about that. And if you have concerns, or there's something that's not working, it sounds as if you've had some challenges. We want to know about those challenges so that we can pass that on to the state. Okay. That's all the questions I see in the chat. Oh, wait. You are referring to the state. Who are you working with or through? Is this a collaboration with finance, purchasing, department. So we are working through the state minority business office. So that's who we contracted with on behalf of the governor's office. And so that is who has contracted with us to perform these services for the state, for the whole state of Alabama. We are looking at every department in the executive branch. So those are the departments that we're looking to impact across the state.
Well, Michelle, I believe that Ms. Robinson is going to also weigh in on that.
Right?
Yes, and the rest of your question included whether or not we were working with procurement. Yes, we are working with the procurement department, the Department of Finance, and all the other agencies that will provide their data as far as it relates to contracting, procurement and contracting. So as she just mentioned, just to summarize, our office, the Alabama Office of Minority Affairs, commissioned this study, and we will take it across procurement as well as other aspects of issues that we're responsible for in this office, which include health, education, justice, and empowerment for women and minorities.
I should be clear also that we're looking at all kinds of goods and services. So generally categories of construction, construction-related professional services, other professional services, other services, as well as goods. So it's everything the state might purchase. And we are, in our study periods, we are looking at 5 years. When we look at utilization, like what has the state been doing up to this point, we're looking at 5 years of all of its payments, every payment that the state has made to a vendor over the last 5 years is part of our analysis.
Let me just add one other perspective and context. The study is collecting the data. Our office is very focused on any programming and policies while this is being done. This is simultaneously being done. However, in our office, we're not waiting for some of the initiatives that we know we need to get in place. For instance, identifying minority businesses, coming up with a more streamlined way for people to participate in doing business with the state. All of those are things that we're working on.
Right. Yeah, they don't have to wait for us.
Right. They can contact our office in that regard.
All those at the end of our study as a commendation, anything that that the state starts to do in the middle of the process.
Yes.
But hopefully what we provide is a lot of support in terms of data.
Yes.
You know, we've come to know that data is important. Data, that whatever you're doing, you want to be able to support it with the data. And that's what the state is providing to us is its data for us to analyze. And then you all are providing us with anecdotal data for us to analyze. So again, please stay. I mean, I know I've said it a couple of times, keep saying it. We need you, just as you all have overwhelmingly participated today and coming to hear the information about the study. We need you when we make the call to say, we need you now to give us your input. We need the same kind of response. Right.
There are a couple more questions in the chat, in the Q&A.
If I understood correctly, you are looking at the 75% of spending. What about the balance, 25%? The 75% is, so we kind of borrow from antitrust law. Interesting place to borrow from. But the idea is when you're looking at what is the general, so what we're trying to find out is what is the economic marketplace that the state is doing its purchasing from. And so if we were to say 100%, we'd include everybody and Guam and, you know, and foreign countries and everything, because you'd be looking even at places where they spend a little here and a little there and a little someplace else. So what we're trying to get is not just maybe where the majority of its spend is, but where's the geographic location of the overwhelming majority of its spend. So yes, that does leave a 25% out there, but what we're trying to get is that what's the general economic marketplace? If you go to 100%, you've picked up all the little places that that you'd be everywhere then. And we're just trying to see where the overwhelming location of the firms are where they're doing business. I hope that kind of answers that question. In antitrust law, when you're looking for what is the market, you're looking at where they're doing at least 75 to 85% of their business. Will your company make recommendations to the state to break down their procurement for SBW, DBE, MBE to be prime contractors? Is that small Black women? I'm not sure what SBW means. So we'll be breaking down our analysis by year. We disaggregate it by work category, and we disaggregate it by ethnicity, race, and gender. So it's kind of the way that you've put it as to be prime contractors. So we'll be looking at prime contracting. We're also going to be looking at subcontracting. Because a lot of work is done in subcontracting, particularly on the construction side. I'll also look probably at size. So, you know, we're going to try and disaggregate it, look at that data any way that we can look at it, to look at various sectors of things. And any more questions? We have a little more time. Okay. Well, we thank you all for joining us. Director Robinson, would you like to give us a few parting words?
And I had one more comment just before we pass it to you, Director Robinson. I wanted to just reiterate what Trinity said about our ability to do this informational session about the study and also having the study in various languages. And I do want to make sure that we're using our resources wisely. So while Trinity said, hey, we'll be doing it in these 3 languages, I wanted to make sure you understand that that will be based on interest. So please do email the address that Trinity gave you to indicate if it is important to you and your community to have an informational session in that language, so that we don't frivolously use resources. If English is good for you, then we obviously will be doing that, but we do want to make sure we are speaking to all of the communities and the business communities in Alabama, and we will absolutely utilize our resources to reach out to you in the languages that you prefer if you reach out to us and let us know. So I just wanted to encourage, we know and we really respect our Spanish speaking, Korean speaking, and Vietnamese speaking communities here in Alabama. We know there's strong business communities in all of those languages. And so we want to definitely hear from you as soon as possible. And I'll pass it over to the director.
All right. Well, we're rounding third and getting home. Thank you again for your participation and interest. We will stay in touch with you, and we just want to say it over and over again, we need you to stay in touch with us. But look for a lot of initiatives coming out of this office. In the short term, another announcement related but unrelated is that we are hosting a Minority Serving Institutions Summit on January 25th and 26th here in Montgomery. You can go to our website for that, and which is themsisummit.com, themsisummit.com, and that's meant to include businesses in the minority community, but focused on minority serving institutions as it relates to broadband, businesses, and other topics of interest to students and the communities where the minority serving institutions serve. So take a look at that and see what we're up to, and just look for many other initiatives that hopefully support your opportunity and growth to do business with the state of Alabama. Thanks again. I'm thrilled with Griffin and Strong. You all bring it always, and I'm excited about what we're already seeing unfold.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thank you.
great afternoon.